I just finished a 6-month-long bulk. During this bulking phase, I really wanted to push towards the goal of trying to get as big and as strong as possible for jiu-jitsu. I've done other bulks in the past where I was really focusing on powerlifting, really focusing on bodybuilding. So like all I cared about were numbers on my squat, bench, deadlift, and overhead press. And so with this most recent bulk, I was doing a lot of different things to try to push up strength and hypertrophy, all within the context of grappling athleticism. And it went great. I am going to turn basically the training programs that I followed during that 6 months, I'm going to turn those into official training programs on the Strength Matrix training app. So be on the lookout for that because those are going to be coming soon here, hopefully within the next couple of months. But the way I structured that was, okay, this is going to be 6 months long. And the first 3 months are going to be focused on hypertrophy. The next 3 months are going to be focused on strength. Now, even though the first 3 months are focused on hypertrophy, that doesn't mean that we're not doing our explosive work. That doesn't mean we're not doing conditioning. That doesn't mean that we're not maintaining other aspects of our athleticism. We're just emphasizing hypertrophy a lot more than some of those other qualities of athleticism. Then when we move into strength, that's not to say that we're not doing any more hypertrophy. We still are. We're just really turning up and emphasizing strength over the other athletic qualities. So a typical week of training in that hypertrophy phase would have looked like, let's see, when I was doing the hypertrophy phase, I was in the gym 4 to 5 days a week. Day one was pretty much always a max effort, lower dynamic effort, upper workout. So very classic condensed conjugate, which I have talked about before in some other podcast episodes and some other videos on my YouTube channel. But that max effort, lower dynamic effort, upper workout for hypertrophy often looked like picking some form of squat or hamstring dominant, or like a quad dominant squat or a hamstring dominant deadlift as my max effort main movement. And I just worked up to a heavy set of 6 reps or a heavy set of 8 reps. Didn't do lower reps than that because I did want to kind of stay within those more traditional hypertrophy rep ranges while also still getting some benefit of strength. So like a squat, for example, could be like a heel elevated belt squat or a high bar back squat, or you could use a hack squat if you wanted to. I didn't end up doing the hack squat, but it was like very quad dominant for the squatting movements and then very hamstring dominant for the hip hinging or deadlift movements. So I did do a deficit stiff leg deadlift for a few phases of training, and that felt really good. But I'd basically do like a max effort main movement, working up to a 6 to 8 rep max. Then I would do some secondary movements. And if you remember from the videos I've done on the max effort method, when we pick secondary exercises, the way I like to look at it is that we have 3 options. Our secondary exercises can either be variations of the movement we just did that kind of focus on one aspect of that movement. So if bench press is your max effort main movement, close grip bench press could be your secondary movement. It's the exact same movement pattern. You're just doing a different variation. You can either look at the movement pattern that you did in your main movement and then do something that you didn't do in the main movement to have a little bit more well-rounded and balanced approach. So for example, if you squatted on 2 legs for your max effort main movement, your secondary movement could include some form of unilateral squatting or lunging. And during the hypertrophy and the strength phase, that's oftentimes what I did. Then the third way that you could pick secondary exercises is to pick them after you've done your max effort main movement and tie it directly to a weakness that you found in the main movement. So for example, say you did a bench press for your max effort main movement and you failed at lockout, or your lockout was really, really weak. Okay, well now you know you have weak triceps, so then your max effort secondary movement would be something that's specific to the weakness of building up your triceps, or specific to addressing that weak point. So in the hypertrophy phase, it was often like a main movement. Then the secondary movement was tackling something that I didn't directly hit in the main movement. Usually for both upper and lower body, I did 1 max effort main movement, 2 secondary movements. Then after that, we moved into our dynamic effort work, and on the when we would, on day one, we do max effort lower, dynamic effort upper. I'm not going to get too deep into the weeds on what we did with dynamic effort upper because we did a lot of new things that I haven't really talked about before. So I'll save those for when we make more videos about this specific training program. But it was all super fast, super twitchy, super explosive. That was day one. On day two for the week, I still did about 40 to 60 minutes of zone 2 cardio, and I would just go out for a run. And that was great because this was the first time that I was really maintaining my running ability through a bulk. And all the other bulks I've done in the past, I would do a little bit of conditioning, but it wasn't zone 2 focused. It was very explosive, very fast, very anaerobic, so to speak. And so in this training program, I wanted to make sure okay, I don't want to lose my conditioning. I know I'm not going to be making a whole lot of gains on my conditioning, but at the very least, I just want to maintain. And as I'm getting bigger, I want to kind of continue to maintain my conditioning so that way I don't really feel a lot of the negative effects of being bigger and how that could impact my conditioning. So day one, max effort lower, dynamic effort upper. Day two was my zone 2 day. Day three was max effort upper, dynamic effort lower. And for the upper body movements, I'd either do some form of a max effort bench press variation or some form of a vertical press or overhead press variation. And then I would do my secondary movements and stuff like that. And then we'd close out that workout with our dynamic effort lower body exercises. Day four is really interesting because day four, I played around with a couple different things. During the hypertrophy, the 3 months where I was really focused on hypertrophy, I took day four as another day to kind of get in some more accessory work. So I hit those smaller muscle groups that are still being worked with all of your main movements and a lot of your big compound lifts, but they're small enough to where they can recover really, really fast. So definitely worked a lot on my shoulders, worked a lot on my forearms. I did a lot of calf exercises too. It'd be cool if my calves grew a lot more, but that wasn't really the main focus. I just wanted my calves just to get really strong, and especially all the tissue around my Achilles tendon and in my feet and all that stuff. So I did a lot of calf work on day four. Day five was a much more traditional, just straight up upper body jacked and tan session. So it was basically an upper body bodybuilding workout. We got a crazy chest pump, crazy shoulder pump, crazy back pump, crazy arm pump, and we called it a day. Most of the time, I could get my training kind of all done within that 5-day training split, but sometimes, depending on my work schedule and other stuff that was going on, I had to kind of roll over some exercises onto Saturday. So if I didn't get some accessory exercises done from Wednesday or Friday, I would just put all those together on Saturday. Saturday was kind of like my catch up or my makeup day. And so I did all those training sessions in the morning. And then what jiu-jitsu looked like during that time was I was really only training about 2 times, maybe 3 times a week. The thing is, I went into this bulk being very intentional and very clear about what my goals were and what my focus was. My goal and my focus was to get as big and as jacked and as strong as possible for jiu-jitsu. And so I wasn't going to try to chase that goal and at the same time try to chase going to jiu-jitsu 7 days a week. That would have been, it's not impossible, but it just wasn't going to be realistic for me to maintain for 6 full months. So I went into this bulk knowing okay, I want to be at jiu-jitsu a minimum of 2 times a week. And if I can get in an extra session and go 3 times a week, that's fantastic. And I'd say I went twice a week most weeks throughout the last 6 months, but there are definitely some times where I missed a week or even or towards the end of the bulk, I missed 2 weeks in a row. So, but I was okay with that. Jiu-jitsu wasn't the main focus. It wasn't the main goal. And I knew that jiu-jitsu was going to kind of be on the back burner a little bit. And so on the days that I did go to jiu-jitsu, the way I structured it was I just went in with a goal for that day. And I kind of just did the best I can to maintain my intention for that training session. So there were some days say I went on day one was max effort, lower, dynamic effort, upper. So I already know okay, if I go to jiu-jitsu on day 2 or the night of day 2, my lower body is going to be kind of sore. So I'm just going to take day 2 a little bit lighter at jiu-jitsu, because I also know that the following morning on day 3, when I go to the gym, I need to push it really hard for my upper body. So that first jiu-jitsu session was definitely a little bit lighter. Then the kind of like the last jiu-jitsu session towards the end of the week, that was the day that I really tried to push it, try to pick like a lot tougher training partners, do a lot more just full-blown sparring rounds, and kind of go from there. So that's kind of how I structured the bulk. I ran 3 months of that format, kind of leaning more on the side of hypertrophy. Then after closing out those 12 weeks of hypertrophy, kind of moved into focusing a little bit more on strength. And maybe I'll do an episode in the future just kind of breaking down like, okay, when do you want to train specifically for hypertrophy? When do you want to train specifically for strength? And we can definitely get into the weeds on all those details, but I'll leave you guys with this. The thing that I think is very important to understand about strength and hypertrophy is that I have found so much success with doing a ton of hypertrophy work before you go into your main strength phase. That doesn't mean that you can't work on strength while also working on hypertrophy, and you can't work on hypertrophy while also working on strength. But if you think of it like dials, if you're pushing your hypertrophy dial all the way up, you want to do that for 12 to 24 weeks before you switch to then pushing up your strength dial. And the main reason being is because a bigger muscle has a greater potential to increase strength or to be trained in a way that's going to make it stronger. So if you kind of like supercharge your strength program, if you have a 12-week strength program and you say, okay, I want to do the 12-week strength program I want to start in April. Okay, well, January, February, and March, that would be the perfect time for you to really push up that hypertrophy dial, increase muscle size a little bit going into that strength phase, so you kind of have bigger muscles that you can train to get stronger and improve their force production capacity. And that's basically what I did. 3 months of hypertrophy followed by 3 months of strength work. I started this bulk weighing 158 pounds, which was pretty much the leanest I'd ever gotten. I'd go as far to say like I got leaner than I was when I did the bodybuilding show. And when I did the bodybuilding show, I weighed 149.6. I think it was 149.6. So over those last several years, gaining about 9 pounds of lean mass. I didn't get a DEXA scan or anything, so I can't say it was all muscle tissue, but that feels pretty good, and that gets me pretty excited. So the goal with this bulk was, okay, by the next time I lean out, I want to get that shredded again over 160. So hopefully within like 163 to 165. Being 165 and that lean, I think would be absolutely ridiculous. I don't believe I could have realistically added 7 pounds of muscle in 6 months, but maybe it's a combination of things where my muscles are just a little bit bigger, so I look bigger and I have water in all the right places to weigh 165 and still look that shredded. But regardless, I just wanted to do the best I could over the last 6 months to get jacked and get really, really strong for jiu-jitsu. And I've had great feedback from all of my training partners that have said like, man, you feel way stronger. And for me personally, I feel way stronger. My conditioning feels great. And so all in all, it was a great bulk.